What is going on, everybody? Welcome to this is actually episode 27
Yeah.
of the Coach and the Couch Potato. So obviously it's the Eddie George episode. I don't care if we go with the obvious answer.
Yeah.
As always, I'm Jeremy the Couch Potato. On the opposite side of the screen, we have the still somewhat sore Coach Slater. What's going on, sir?
Oh, not much, man. Listen, when they tell you to get your wisdom teeth out at a younger age because it's much worse when you're older, they are telling the truth. It sucks. Okay, I don't even have another way to put it. I got all four taken out, and man, like it's been kicking my butt. But we're battling. I've lost a couple pounds because I haven't really been able to eat what I want to eat, so that's a positive. But we're here. Thank you guys for your patience. We thought we would be able to record in the week, and I just kept texting Jeremy like, "Hey, man, like this is not going well." So yeah, thank you for your patience. Thank you everybody for tuning in to the live that Jeremy did. That was kind of just an impromptu thing, so we could get some information out or answer some questions. So shout out to my partner in crime, the Couch Potato, for taking care of that, man, and picking up your teammate on this side, man. So I appreciate it.
Hey, that's what we do. That's what we do. It was fun.
Yeah.
Like I told you, a lot of NFL talk that night. I was kind of granted, I got asked some pretty detailed Buckeye questions. I'm like, I can't go into that because we're going to talk about it at some point.
Yeah.
The Oregon game got brought up a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And there's plenty of thoughts there, and we will get there. But as we said before, Dan Lanning is going to be a problem.
He's the real deal.
So, yeah, that was cool, though. It was fun. It was low-key, just something to keep the interaction out there. And it was something I wanted to try because, real talk, doing a Facebook Live through a page and not your own account and on a computer is way different.
Really?
Yeah, there were a lot of, I don't want to say technical difficulties, but it's very like step-by-step oriented, and I didn't know what I was doing. Because I've done lives from my own page all the time.
Yeah.
So it was cool to understand that. Like, and then you get like the cool little insight bar while you're on there. And I think we got asked like, there were probably like 40 questions that came through within an hour.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, and of course, it went from everything from did you get NCAA football to, call your shot for the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Which I did. And I went with kind of a surprise. I think the Chiefs is the easy answer. So I went with either the Lions or the Bengals.
There we go. Okay.
So,
all right.
Pained me, as a Browns fan, but I do think the Browns make a step forward. But we'll get there.
Yeah. Hey, sidebar, really quick. We're not getting paid by these people to endorse this, but if you have Netflix, I strongly encourage you to watch Receiver. It is phenomenal. Like, the amount of respect I have for the Lions organization is through the roof because of that show. So shout out to Netflix for doing that. And Peyton Manning is the executive producer. They've done the quarterback series the last couple seasons. So I like that they're going through position groups. I think it'll be well received if you haven't checked that out. So that's something.
Nice pun there too.
Yeah.
The owner of my company actually walked through the other day and asked me if I had watched it yet. He had not, but his wife has. They're big Raiders fans.
Okay.
And I said, well, it's funny that you tell me that because the one comment I saw as soon as it released was, somebody please get Devontae out of Vegas.
Oh my gosh. You're almost rooting for him to get traded. Like it was, you started to feel bad for the guy. And like, the wide receiver is always considered like this prima donna. And, he does come off as that a couple times, but it's like, dude, like I get it. I get why you're so frustrated, man. So it was, it's really good, man. It's really good.
Yeah. I have not checked it out yet. So that I had to, watch the first part of the new season of Cobra Kai. That was my Netflix for the week. So it's been a kind of a low key 2 weeks though. So that's kind of why the wisdom teeth came at a perfect time, though.
It did.
It allowed us to try something new. And still, we did get a commitment this week, so we'll dive into that. And then, we hit on it a couple weeks ago. Somebody asked us about NIL and pipeline states, and I'll read the actual question when we get there. So we're going to use this to dive into that. We're 41 days out from the start of the season, so at that point, the off-topic things, there's not going to be time. Let's be honest. It's going to be game recaps, game previews, that type of stuff. So, we're going to dive into this type of stuff for the next couple of weeks. And we talked before we came on the air about a few things we're excited to talk about. So we'll get there. We'll talk about, the commitment of the week, first and foremost. And that's Jarquez Carter.
Yeah.
Anytime the Buckeyes can go into Florida and get a kid, that's a win.
It's a huge win. It's a huge win.
The Florida, for a long time, everybody thought this kid was going to Miami.
Yeah.
I'm not real familiar with this program. He goes to Newberry.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like they might be a lower level school.
Yeah.
But it sounds like what you've said all the time. He dominates.
Yes.
Against lower level competition.
Yeah.
The measurables, 6'2", 284. Obviously, he's going to beef up. He's an interior guy. But his tape looks good.
It does.
247 has him as a 3-star, but he's a composite 4-star. That's something we've seen a lot of. Petajon, is a 4-star almost everywhere, but the composite puts him at a 5.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's they're getting more accurate and everything, but again, the stars are nice, but when you're taking a 30, 31 man class, the stars aren't everything.
No, they're not. And Jarquez Carter is, and we'll get into a little bit of a breakdown. I got some film I'll pull up of him. But he is a really good football player. When you watch the film, you'll see his first step is very quick. The assistant defensive line coach, Alan Clark, tweeted after Jarquez committed, Mike Hall 2.0.
I saw that.
So I'm just going to say Mike Hall was pretty good. If he could have stayed healthy and maybe we had a little bit of a better rotation, he had All-American potential. And I think he's going to be a really good player for our favorite NFL team. And so, I think anytime you can make that type of comparison to somebody that is going to be in an incoming class, I think it's a big deal. So, for assistant defensive line coach Alan Clark to come out and say that, it's big. And one thing I want to point out before we get into the film, and we were just talking about it before we got on here, I love the way that Larry Allen and the Buckeyes are recruiting the defensive line. We've said it, we've pounded the table for it. Like, it's great to go swinging for those big fish, but you've got to lay the foundation of that defensive line room, of the position group in general. You've got to lay that foundation. And so, it would be nice if Jakeem Stewart reclassifies and Malik Autry picks the Buckeyes. That'll be huge because those are two guys that are going to be automatic takes no matter what.
Yep.
But let's say you don't get those two, you've laid the foundation with 3 really good defensive tackles. When I say really good, like, again, with Trajan Odom, with Maxwell Roy, and now Jarquez Carter, you've got 2 guys that are going to be a really good 3 technique type player. Then you've got one that's going to be a really good 1 technique. And so those are the things that I love seeing us do with the interior defensive line recruiting. But back to Jarquez Carter, he's listed at 6'2", 285. There's some reports out there that he's maybe not exactly 6'2", more of the 6 foot range, which is fine. Anytime you can get a BB Landers type guy in here as well, I will take him all day long, right? So don't get caught up in the height or anything. Like you said earlier, he's going to beef up. And this is a kid. Getting anybody from Florida is huge. And we've been talking about pipelines, and we'll talk about that later on in the episode. But getting somebody from Florida is huge. So I'm going to present my screen. We'll pull up some of his highlights. He had a really good offer list as well. A lot of people, like you said, thought he was going to end up at Miami, but he chose the Buckeyes, so it's not a bad thing for us.
No, it's always good to beat Miami because you guys know I like to take pot shots at Miami. So,
oh man! All right, here we go. So, let's see. He's from where to say Newberry High School in Florida, like you said. Yeah, might be a lower level school. We haven't done that much research on the school itself, but for him as a player, he's pretty special. The one thing I love, and just right off the bat, it just jumps off the screen. He's lined up at 3 or as a defensive end here, but his first step on this first clip
was very quick.
It's so quick, and you're talking about a guy that's going to be on the interior for the Buckeyes, and just that quick, and the hustle, the relentlessness to the football. Like when you're recruiting somebody from a lower level school, that is what you want to see. You want to see dominance, you want to see quickness, and he's got all of that. And so when you get the comparisons of a Mike Hall, you're thinking about getting penetration and being an interior pass rusher on third down, which the Buckeyes, that's something that we covet. That's something that Larry Johnson covets. And so we need to make sure that we are getting those guys in the class. With Jarquez, I think we got a really good one. His first step is outrageous, but these are my favorite type of plays right here. The hustle plays. Dude, you're a 3-star recruit. You're going to get recruited to every school in the country, but you're still playing with that type of fire. Like, that's phenomenal. I love seeing that.
Yeah, I mean, the one physical knock, aside from the height, discrepancy maybe, there's some talk about his arm length.
Yeah.
But being inside, to me, that's not beautiful. As important. Just like the first step. With that type of first step inside, and that's why Mike Hall was so good.
Yes.
Let's just make no bones about it. Guards and centers, despite the fact that they pull, are not as athletic as tackles. It's just, and this kid's a basketball player, so that explains some of the first step. You see more of your tackles that are out, playing basketball. Look at DeJuan Jones.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
So I guess, again, from just the, you watch guys like Tyleek and Ty Hamilton, and even Ty's brother Davon, those were all guys who didn't come in with a ton of flash, but they have motor, they have that quick, almost a twitch, for a big guy. So,
and the other thing too is you talk about the arm length, like that. Yeah, that could be a knock. The arm length does come into play at times, but if you're as quick with your hands as you are with your feet, the arm length doesn't matter because you've already engaged with the offensive lineman. So now their arm length is a moot point. And so, with his quickness and his strength, he bench pressed 225 27 times at the rivals camps or something like that, which is just unreal for a high school kid. And I believe he's pretty young for his class too. I think they said he's going to graduate at the age of 17. And so he's going to be a young kid. Gosh, man, you just get him into that weight room. Like he has got so much, just a dominant player. Like I could watch his this highlight film all day long. Like he is just a dominant player. And that's the type of guy that the Buckeyes want as that 3 technique. It's got that quickness, got that vertical pass rushing ability. And I think, a year or two in the weight room and I think he could be a rotational player for us and wreak havoc on third down in the passing game. Whew.
Yeah,
he just can run, man. Gosh.
Yeah, so he'll be 18 right before college season will start.
Gotcha.
And just like you talk about the domination of a lower level, so he's played 33 career varsity games. He has 26 sacks and 81 tackles for loss. I mean,
that's dominance.
Yeah, I mean, you can't ask for much more. And that would also explain why he's lining up outside a lot for his high school team if it is a lower level team, and he's probably the best athlete on the D line. I find the mismatch if you can find one and get him in there.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, excited to see what happens there. We thought this was going to be a bad news week on the recruiting front, and our sadness has been postponed. I guess it's probably the easiest way to put it.
That's an easy way to put it.
We've gone from digging the grave to being on life support with Trey McNutt.
Yeah.
McNutt was supposed to announce Friday. Came out and said, I'm going to push it back 2 weeks. Let's be frank, call a spade a spade. It doesn't change anything. He's not committing to Ohio State at this point in his life. Not to say he will not end up at Ohio State, because out of all the guys who have committed elsewhere, that's probably the best potential flip.
Yeah.
There's a couple of trains of thought out there. One is that a new school, and they were on his final list, but there's some talk that Texas A&M has gave him something to think about.
Okay.
He's playing 7-on-7 out of Texas. So, and that was the whole OHSAA debacle in January, January, February, March, somewhere in there. But so he's built some relationships in Texas, so that's a chance. But the more likely issue is the whole Microsoft outage that happened on Friday. I still saw today that there are thousands of flights being grounded today, 3 days later.
Okay.
So it sounds like there were some logistical issues with some family members that he wanted to be there. And apparently I've never flown. They don't make airplane seats for giants. But apparently if you get canceled, they try to book you immediately, but you save more money if you book out 2 weeks. It's one of the things I've seen.
Yeah.
So at this point, Trey McNutt's going to announce in 2 weeks, and it's still not going to be Ohio State.
Yeah.
But until he says otherwise, he's still expected on campus one, if not multiple times this fall.
Yeah.
So who knows? It's the wild, wild west. The only thing crazier than college football recruiting is politics, and we don't talk politics here. So Pernell Brown, another guy you've heard us talk about, committed to Florida today. Probably the least shocking thing of the cycle. Dad's a guy, an alum, played ball there. Coaches or is on staff somewhere in Florida, I think. Not at Florida, but
I'm not 100% sure, but I think I'm pretty sure he's on staff somewhere in Florida.
So staying in the home state again, not really a surprise. As far as what's on the horizon, just to kind of keep everything in the loop like we try to do, we're about a month out from David Sanders. Sounds like the family's going to take some road trips after the dead period. Not, anything official visit-wise. That'll be interesting to see, do they go to one school? Do they go to – it sounds like it's an Ohio State-Tennessee deal. I don't think Ohio State's going to be outbid for him. So if he goes elsewhere, you can't say, oh, my God, it's an NIL deal, like we've talked about Ohio State fans like to do.
Yeah.
So we've got that on the horizon. Phillip Bell, sounds like he might be trending back to the good guys. Messiah Delhomme, we've talked about him. Berm went on record the other day and said if he wants to be in this class in Ohio State, or if Ohio State pushes for him, he'll be in the class.
Yeah. Which I think, honestly, I don't see how Ohio State doesn't push for him at this point. With the likelihood of a Trey McNutt not ending up at Ohio State. Messiah Delhomme is a guy that I would have taken anyway as a coach. I think he's an absolute baller in the secondary who's got so much position versatility that I think, he would have been an automatic take, but I totally get, trying to wait it out and see what Trey wants to do, because Trey is, he's a legacy and he's also one of the best players in the country. If he's the best safety in the country, so I get it. But I think Messiah Delhomme, like you said, if they push for him, he's in, and that would be a good get for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, for sure. And then apparently the Texas insiders are saying that Jamie French is still taking his official to Ohio State this fall. Okay. So that's interesting. Jakeem Stewart is apparently coming for the game. Still no official reclassification there, but it's a technicality at this point. And once he reclassifies, all bets are off, and the Buckeyes are going to push extremely, extremely hard for him.
Absolutely. And as they should, because he is special. He is special.
Yeah.
I did read something. It was on one of the major recruiting websites, but they were talking about the idea of him wanting the opportunity to start out as a defensive end. Because he is a massive human being. I mean, he's,
Right.
6'5", 6'6", whatever he is, 280 pounds. When you're that big, the idea is that, okay, you're going to grow into a monster on the interior. But I think one of the things that he's really wanting is that opportunity to start out on the edge. And I think in the Buckeyes scheme, that strong side defensive end, I think, that would be a great sell for him. Like, you could be this for us. You could stay in that 280 to 290 range and be that strong side defensive end and be a dominant player to the field for us. So that's something to kind of look at. But, man, get that kid in this class, man. Whatever it takes.
Yeah, it's going to be a war.
Whatever it takes.
A war. So, yeah, that's just kind of where we're at with kind of what's on the horizon, I guess you would say, recruiting-wise. It's getting to be the point where, I'll start to dive into some of the 26s, start doing some research, and because you're going to start seeing some of those kids pop a lot of places, I think. We saw it with quarterbacks. We hit on it this summer. I haven't heard anything else on the Chris Henry Jr. reclassification. It would be nice, though, because there are some visits he's going to take that make you a little nervous, especially being in Cali for high school now. So,
yeah,
we'll see. But, yeah, that's kind of where we're at on the OSU world. Around the sports world, pretty quiet week with the MLB All-Star Game, so you don't really, that was a trivia question I asked in the live the other night. There are 2 days on the calendar that there are no professional sports games.
Okay.
The day before and the day after the MLB All-Star Game.
Huh. Okay. Yeah. Never knew that.
And then Ryan Treese actually asked me one, and I forget how he worded it, but I'm going to have to find it. And we're going to ask that one day. It involved NFL and NBA number 1 draft picks.
Okay. All right.
So that was pretty cool. That was one of the other cool things that came out. We played a little trivia, not anything crazy. So, yeah, for our big topic of the day, we got this message. This was back at the end of June after Trajan Odom committed. And the listener who sent this attached a photo of our up-to-date commitments and from what states they're from. But the question is, what are your guys' thoughts on the landscape of college football recruiting moving forward in the NIL world? And how does this impact previous traditional pipeline states for the Buckeyes moving forward? That's part 1 of the question. And then we'll attack that part first. The second part covers some pipeline states, so we'll kind of address that at the end. So for those of you guys that, don't pay nearly as much attention to this as we do, pipeline states are kind of those areas where, be it a coach, a staffer, whatever, has a relationship. And you go to that area, being from Ohio State, obviously you wear scarlet and gray, you're going to get in the door of every high school you walk in.
Yep.
But, for Ohio State to walk into Calabasas, California, and have rapport with anybody there doesn't happen overnight.
No.
Just like Nick Saban walking into Cleveland Glenville, aside from the fact that he's Nick Saban, he doesn't have that relationship with Ginn Sr. or anybody there. So I would say during the Jim Tressel era, obviously Ohio State's going to recruit Ohio. really, really well. And then I would say Pennsylvania was a pipeline state.
Okay.
And really, outside of that, Jim Tressel just sprinkled in guys from everywhere.
Yeah.
Urban then comes along. So now you've automatically, and he brings Zach Smith with him from Florida, and Zach recruited South Florida very well. Let's just be honest. So that's where you really started to see this massive influx of Florida guys to Ohio State. Tressel got some. He went and got Chris Gamble. He went and got Brian Roll. I mean, there were guys that were hard pulls from Florida. So as we sit in today's Ohio State roster building process, I would say that Texas has essentially became a pipeline in a way. That Pennsylvania, New Jersey area, there's a pipeline there.
Yep.
The DMV, we've talked about the DMV and Larry Johnson. And you do still have, especially with wide receivers, a Florida pipeline.
Yeah.
So I think, now you're seeing Ohio State go into Alabama. So that's a perfect example. Now, I don't think that's NIL related. There's, staff connections there now. But Ohio State's got a real shot of absolutely raiding the state of Alabama.
Yeah.
Your boy Turbo is sounding more and more like a potential flip. Do you think that's a fair assessment of current pipeline states?
Yeah, I think so. I think, with the pipeline states, there's just so much that goes into it. Like you said, has the coach had success in recruiting there before? With Larry Johnson and the DMV, like those type of things. We had a little run in New York as well after Curtis Samuel. Like there's so many different factors that go into it. But I think when it comes to, NIL and things like that, like I think NIL has a potential to change that entire landscape simply because you are now motivated by something else. You know what I mean? And so like adding that different layer of thought, whether it's, you're for the money or not for the money, but even just sprinkling that in, it makes you think differently. Like, yeah, I grew up a Buckeye fan, but Oregon, like we've just seen, has dropped a ton of money. So now it looks like, okay, Oregon is creating these different pipelines in Ohio or wherever, on the East Coast, when in actuality, is it just because they're spending that much money? And so this is such a good question. I just tried to look up some of the recruiting pipelines that Ohio State has had, and you mentioned the majority of them, but it's always interesting. Like our pipelines, I believe happen in runs, like they happen in runs. You're seeing a run in Alabama right now, and Kyle DeBoer at Alabama is trying to do whatever it takes to make sure that stops. You saw a run in Texas for a while. You see a run, in Florida. And so I love the fact that, our pipelines outside of the state of Ohio kind of go in waves. And I think that just shows the national footprint of what Ohio State has to bring. You know what I mean? Like Ohio State is one of the only schools in the country that you could go into, like you said, in Calabasas, California, and you have to think about Ohio State now. You have no choice. Ohio State came all the way out to Cali to recruit me. Now I have to think about what my life could be like in Columbus, Ohio. So it's such a good question. And I think, Ohio State is one of the best positioned schools to really tap into both being a pipeline school / state and providing high level NIL money as well. I think Ohio State's the best positioned in the country. If you're and that's not me being, a homer. That's just me looking at the landscape of where these big schools are. And so I think Ohio State has potential to really lay down pipelines in a lot of different states if they really push this NIL thing, especially if there's not going to be any guardrails for it. So,
Yeah, another state that we went on a run in is Washington.
yeah, yes,
JPT, Mecca, G. Scott. I
yeah,
mean, this Washington hated us.
yeah,
And it's funny that you hit on Ohio State being well positioned. I want to say I don't remember who said it, but I read it somewhere that the comparison was made that Ohio State is like a cocked slingshot right now.
yeah,
That a natty this season is going to launch that program into the stratosphere.
yeah,
To where it's going to be hard for anybody to touch the program.
yeah,
So, like Oregon, for example, obviously I would assume there's a pipeline to California and Washington.
yeah,
As good as Oregon's class is this year, I don't know the exact number of commits they have. They have 0 commitments from the state of Oregon.
yeah.
Like, that's wild.
That's insane.
So that was the second part of the question is, do you think that Ohio State will start recruiting other places, i.e. the Deep South and the Pacific West Coast, harder? So I hit on this a couple weeks ago when we first brought this question up. And that was one of the things, the differences between Ryan Day and Urban Meyer is that Urban loved Florida, but he never really went into Texas. He went into Texas for Mike Mitchell. He went into Texas for J.K. Dobbins.
Yep.
And I guess you could call Garrett Wilson an urban recruit.
Yeah.
So there was a start there. But you look at Ryan Day's recruiting board, and he's going all over the position. It doesn't matter what position you play. He's hitting Texas hard.
Absolutely.
But I don't feel like Ryan Day hits Florida as hard as Urban did by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
Some of that could be Tony Alford getting burnt so many times.
Yep.
You look at, we went Carlos Hyde, Florida. Jamal Berry, rest in peace, Florida.
Yeah.
I mean, then you start diving Johnny Dixon, Ben Victor. I mean, it was wild, the number of guys from the state of Florida that came up here because the stigma was always there.
Yeah.
So that was one thing, to answer the second part of the question. But I definitely think that with Ohio State being Ohio State, the national map is there. I don't care if you're from New Mexico.
Yeah.
You saw it with Lincoln Keenholz.
Yep.
To go to the Mountain West area of the country and pull him. Who, by the way, Lincoln Keenholz tidbit, won the home run derby at the Cardell Jones softball game last night.
Yeah, it was.
Athlete.
I was listening to it on the radio. My daughter's got a double ear infection, so I was taking her to the urgent care. On the way back, I happened to listen to a little bit of it, and they were talking about Lincoln Keenholz was getting interviewed, and he was just won the home run derby, and yeah, I think the players ended up beating the former players, and so he's an unreal athlete.
Yeah, he is a freak.
The national footprint of things is and this is just maybe me thinking of if I was to ever to run a major program like this, you want to be able to have a footprint in those major states. And so we were talking about loving the way that Ohio State is recruiting this defensive line. We've gotten on the defensive line 2 guys who are, 3-star level guys, if you look at the recruiting rankings, but they come from big states. So we need to be able to hit home. Just talking about Jarquez Carter. Like, we haven't had a ton of success. I want to say we haven't had, but, with Tony Alford getting burned, our reputation in Florida may have taken a little bit of a hit, even though we still got, the Brandon Ennis's and the Jeremiah Smiths and things like that. But now you can go lay a footprint with the defensive line. Again, we had it with the Bosas. We had been there before, but now you can start to lay a footprint, and you can go after these low 3-star level players who have elite traits that you were looking for. And now you've just expanded that footprint even more. When you go to the state of Texas, the state of Texas has so much football, and they've got so much talent at every division and every level. You can really start to lay a footprint. You may not get those top level guys, but you can really start to lay a footprint in getting those guys that are going to come in and grind and that are just football players, and in 2 years are going to be starters for you while you're swinging for those big fish that are across the nation. And so, like, Ohio State, in my opinion, is just positioned at the absolute top when it comes to this. Ohio State and Columbus, Ohio in general just provides the student athletes with so much beyond the game of football. I can't reiterate that enough. I mean, from being in the memorabilia world, people like Braxton Miller could live in Columbus, Ohio for the rest of his life and never have to worry about not having a job. Like, he'll always be making a ton of money. You know what I mean? And like, if you're one of those top guys, let's say Travion Henderson, just use him as an example. He goes to the NFL for a couple of years. He never sticks onto a roster. After 5 years, says, I'm going to hang him up. But he comes back to Columbus. Columbus is going to take care of Travion Henderson. And so we are positioned in that way because we don't have, outside of the crew, we don't have a major professional program in the city. And so the Buckeyes are that. If you go out to Eugene, Oregon, that's not a knock on Eugene. I think Oregon's a great football program, but what is there? You know what I mean? Like, you go down to Georgia, like you go to Athens, like there's not as much as Ohio State can offer. And so I just think Ohio State is just well positioned to really tap into all these states and to so much talent on a national level while also keeping the best at home in the Midwest. And so we sound like a bunch of homers right now, but it's just the facts are the facts. Ohio State is positioned to dominate this era of college football.
Yeah, I mean, you look at every best city to live in or most up-and-coming city or whatever list you want to look at, Columbus, Ohio is in almost all of them.
Yeah.
Like you talked about Athens. Yes, those guys can go to Atlanta.
Yep.
And OSU did decent in Georgia under Urban. But also that was when Mark Richt was at Georgia, and that was a disaster.
Yeah.
You got Raekwon McMillan. You got Bradley Roby, Cameron Hayward.
Yeah.
I mean, you did well there. And, now Kirby. But the opening in Georgia is the opening that Alabama held.
Yeah.
If Ohio State can take that, just like Louisiana, Jakeem Stewart, I would have to look. But I think the last player Ohio State got from the state of Louisiana was Nader Abdallah.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's
a long time ago.
One off the top of my head.
Yeah.
You look at the David Sanders Jr. thing, and that Charlotte Metroplex area, overlooked a lot when it comes to football. That's somewhere Ohio State's never really hit. So you get Sanders, now you're starting to make inroads.
Yep.
Obviously going to always have inroads. Indiana, Pennsylvania. We don't go to Kentucky a lot, but I don't know. Let's just be honest. Kentucky is not a great high school football state.
God, I wanted us to get Ryan Timmons, though, back in the day. I wanted him to be a Buckeye so bad.
We're still waiting on the Jadeveon Clown commitment, too.
Yeah.
Ryan Timmons, for anybody that reads the 11 Warriors message boards that listens, the legend of Ryan Timmons is still there.
Oh, my gosh.
Dude, that one is one of those. I still want Christian Kirk, but so it's going to be interesting. NIL, and there's still companies in Columbus that, to my knowledge, at least in the public eye, are not getting involved yet. I don't see Nationwide doing anything. Not to say they're not, but as far as to have, put Will Howard in a Nationwide commercial with, Donovan Jackson, saying Nationwide's on your side when he protects Will. I mean,
so
we'll see. I do think there's something there. Sidebar: you brought up Braxton. Braxton's son
Oh
is
yeah,
about to start his 7th grade season and
yeah,
has already been offered a scholarship from Tom Herman and FAU.
yeah.
And my lord, does the kid look just like Braxton?
He's just twin. They are twins.
And
Oh my gosh,
I believe Braxton was a father while he was in school. I
he
mean,
was. He was.
you hit on the success that former Buckeyes have in Columbus. Look at Cardell Jones.
Yeah,
Cardell played 3 meaningful games for the
yep,
Buckeyes and is a made man in Columbus, Ohio.
absolutely.
Now Cardell's been smart and he's made some great relationships and obviously he's on the board of the foundation and he's kind of the face of the foundation. But that's a great example of that.
Tyvis Powell, DeVere Posey, all those guys who
Yeah,
when their playing careers were over, came right back to Columbus. And you look at what they're doing on the radio. Like DeVere is phenomenal on the radio, and Tyvis's personality has shown so much. Like there are just so many different ways that you can make an impact in the city of Columbus after you're done playing football at Ohio State. Even if you're not one of the top tier guys, you could be, a walk-on level guy. Like it really
right.
doesn't matter. You put that you played football for the Ohio State University and it carries you, it can help you out in a tremendous way. And so, we've said it before and gosh, man, I was I don't want to say I was anti, I'm not anti NIL. I support the kids always getting paid, but I did think it would take away from the game a little bit. But now as things have started to shake out, I don't necessarily think it takes away from the game. I think it just the players have to grow up a lot earlier. And like that's the one thing that my focus now as a high school coach and being around players who are getting offered NIL deals when they commit to whatever school they're going to commit to is just making the best decision that's for them, and don't make the decision solely based on the amount of dollar signs that you're going to get.
Right.
Like try to position yourself so that if football never works out, if you go to whatever school and you are only a special teams player and you don't get that opportunity, that you graduate with your degree and that you are able to go out there into the world and take advantage of, the platform that you were given. You know what I mean? And like that's my biggest thing. I had a conversation a couple years ago with a parent of a football player who was going to be making a decent amount of money. When I was down in San Antonio at the All-American Bowl, and they said they're flat out, my kid is not touching any of that NIL money. Like they had accounts and financial advisors like set up things for them to where every dollar of NIL was going to be put away and they were never going to touch it until they hit a certain age. And I was like, man, that's smart. Like you hope more and more. And this was one of the best players in the country and their dad, and they were a well-off family. It wasn't like they were going to be hurting for money. And so like, I love hearing those situations. And so, Ohio State's positioned itself so well with all this stuff. I'm kind of all over the place, but it's just so Ohio State's in the best possible position to succeed in the NIL era. And I think Ryan Day is the right guy. I think Pantone is the right GM. I think Tony Petiti or whatever the guy's name is that we brought in from Alabama. I don't know what his name is. What's his name? It's not Petiti. What am I talking about? No, it's not Petiti. But whoever that guy is we brought in from Alabama to be the right-hand guy for Pantone, those are the people that are the best in the business at what they do, and they're going to look after the kids.
Yeah, 100. And Ohio State also, Sam Petito. So you were
Sam
close.
Petito, yeah.
Ohio State has a whole part of their compliance office designed for helping the guys with NIL, managing their money. And I will not say a good word about Doug Archie, who runs Ohio State's compliance department, but that's one thing they've got right.
Yeah.
Because like you said, they're forcing these kids to grow up. And that takes me back to it's a really great way to look at it, because we go back to everybody's most polarizing person in professional sports, and we're going to drop a LeBron reference.
Yeah.
When LeBron announced he was coming back to Cleveland, he said that going to Miami was like going to college for him, because he had to grow up so fast going to the Cavs the first time, but he didn't necessarily have all that guidance. He didn't have that chance to balance. Whereas these kids are getting a lot of money, and that's okay. Again, we are absolutely in the boat of the players need to be paid. Do I think there needs to be some regulation? Yeah, but it's the NCAA and they don't do anything proactively. And that's on them. They need to figure out if it's a cap, or if it's, and again, the whole thing at Oregon, I guess, is probably the best example out there, because I think everybody else has kind of had that come to Jesus moment that you can't just go throw bags at everybody and it's going to work.
Yeah.
Texas A&M has not seen a shred of success from, the class that Jimbo said, we're being accused of buying players. That's an insult.
Yeah.
So Phil Knight is 86 years old. Whoever takes over Nike after Phil Knight is not going to continue to let it be the Oregon NIL checkbook. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But I do think you're going to see us continue to go national. I need to find the list because it wouldn't be updated, but it'd be easy to double check. 11 Warriors put out a list like 2 years ago of, Ohio State football players by state.
Yeah.
So, like Hawaii, we've talked about Hawaii a couple of times. There's like 2, Scott and then Enoch Fiamahi. So,
yeah.
But we'll see, as far as that goes. So yeah, we, like we said, we've got like 4 more episodes. Actually, we'll call it 3 episodes, because we got to do a season preview. If you have a question like that we can dive into, shoot it to us. We'll take a check. We'll see if it's something we feel like we can dive into.
Yeah.
Because again, that's we do this, is to dive into things and talk and go from there. We might even try to throw a little bit of high school football preview coming up. Speaking of high school football, I know you're a purist, but the white Marion Harding helmets are growing on me. It depends on what they put on them.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
the other side to it.
Okay. So I agree 1,000%. They are. I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure how I felt about them. But if you look back at the history of Harding football, they did have white helmets and they did have red face masks at one point. They also had red jerseys. And so that is something that is not, it's not necessarily new, but it's definitely grown on me. And I'm a big fan. Listen, I'll root for anybody who ever coaches at Harding. You got to find a way to put your stamp on the program, you know what I mean, and get the kids excited. And one of the things we did was we bought new jerseys and we added a stripe on our helmet, and that was a big deal, you know what I mean. And so hopefully Coach Williamson goes out there and takes care of business this year. But the helmets, they're definitely have grown on me. I'm turning into a fan of them. Not gonna lie.
I did see one person say they hope that they go to the sweater vested eagle that Coach Slater has.
Yeah.
Reminds me of the Wittenberg Cardinal.
Yeah.
I almost want
the funny thing about the sweater vested eagle. Shout out to Jarquez Carter and Corey Chapman for this. They were the ones that really pushed me to do it. But I found so I was when I was a diversity supervisor, there was a teacher, a math teacher. I can't remember which one it was. Who was it? I can't remember off the top of my head, but there was a family emergency or something, she needed to go, and she stopped by my office and asked me to cover her room for the last 2 periods of the day. I'm like, absolutely. And so I go up there and I'm sitting at her desk and I turn around and there's all these old bookmarks back from when I was in like elementary school that were like Harding football, like 1996 and stuff like that. And on one of them was a sweater vested eagle. And I was like, why is this not ever, why haven't I seen this in the last 20 years? And I asked Kearns what he thought, and he was like, "Yeah, it's pretty cool." And so we put it on the helmet, man. That thing is sweet. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm
sure.
proud. I'm definitely proud of that one for sure.
Yes. So I mean, it's I know we didn't like rehearse a coach session, so there's a little bit of one.
Yeah.
What's the next week look like on the high school front? Where are you guys at in the process? Are we getting active in helmets yet?
Yeah. So we just got shoulder pads on last week. I believe last Wednesday was our first acclimation day. Am I saying that right? Yeah. Last Wednesday was the first day in shoulder pads. And so we had a 7-on-7 on Thursday with a practice before that. And so we're gearing up with the pads right now. We have to go through that throughout the next week. And then August 1st is when you can really start, getting after it a little bit.
Start, right?
That's the start. Yeah. So it's fun, man. It's fun. The kids are excited. They were so pumped up to get the shoulder pads, and it always tears them up when they get the shoulder pads on and you go to do like a form tackling drill and you hand them a pad that they have to hold.
Yeah.
Because you're not allowed to do that yet. And so that's it's fun, man. This is the best time of the year, gearing up for the week 1 opponent. Old Tangy, we've got Liberty the first game, so that's going to be a
rivalry game right
off the rip. And for me, that's a personal one. They knocked us out of the playoffs last year at Findlay, and so we're gearing up for it, man. But it's the next week is just more of that, a couple more 7-on-7s that we're going to be going to, and but yeah, man, it's the best time. College coaches or high school coaches just running around getting after it. I do want to give a shout out. We had a 7-on-7 with the Afrocentric Nubians last week. And first off, talent out of, oh my gosh,
okay.
There's so much talent that they have skill-wise. I don't know about their offensive line because it was 7-on-7. But I wanted to give them a shout out because it was so cool. It was us, Columbus Centennial, Delaware Hayes, and the coaching staffs. Every single coaching staff was on freaking fire, like just coaching so hard. Afrocentric was, oh my, it was great to see, some tough coaching and the kids responding to it. And it was good to see some good, like, a little bit of trash talk going on between the players, but nothing but respect. And so I wanted to give them a shout out. My buddy Eric Barry is on their coaching staff, and they were just getting after it, man. And it was good. It's good to see young coaches out there just flying around and the kids responding to it. So that was definitely a fun 7-on-7 for us, and it was a good tune-up. But Afrocentric, they can stay healthy. They got potential, man, to be pretty good.
That's awesome. To be not only a girls' powerhouse basketball school, but their boys program has always been pretty solid too. So
yeah.
That's cool to hear.
Yeah.
So Liberty, I mean, right off the rip, they've got probably the most acclaimed quarterback in Central Ohio, I would say. So,
and they got a running back that's going to Ohio State for lacrosse, who is.
So he's got to be that low center of gravity, kind of built like a bowling ball guy.
He's pretty good, but we the Braves, we've got some talent as well. So it'll be a good one for sure.
Cool deal, man. Well, that's great to hear. Yeah, people don't understand. Us football freaks. I guess let's just be honest. We are. Even you and I talk football in February. I mean, it's just the way it goes.
Yeah. So the other part of it too is a lot of people don't realize what everything that goes into being a high school football coach, specifically a head coach. We had a we had a meeting the other day with the entire middle school coaching staffs talking about our defense again. The middle schools had questions about some things, and they wanted to sit down with us and make sure that they were teaching it right. And, so we were doing that 2 hours before practice, and it's just like, there's just so much that goes into building a program that the head coach is so responsible for. And it just makes things, if you don't have like top-notch assistants, like I was fortunate to have, and people that are just willing to like grind, like it can be very, very taxing. But when you have assistants that you could text and be like, hey, the middle school coaches want to come in with you and chat, do you have an extra hour and a half before practice you can talk? Like being able to have those guys that you can trust to go in and coach up your coaches, like that's such a blessing as a head coach to have. And so shout out to all those guys that are soldiers for the players, and they're just phenomenal assistants, man, because I think assistant coaching, like, it gets overlooked. You're either a head coach, you're a coordinator. If you're not any of that, then you're a bum. Like people, a lot of people think that. It's like, no, that's not the case. Like, there are some phenomenal assistant coaches in the state of Ohio, in Central Ohio specifically, that could be head coaches of so many different programs, but they love being servants. They love serving the head coach. They love serving the kids, and like, be great where you are, man. There's nothing wrong with that. And so shout out to all those guys, man, that are, going the bat for their programs and maybe not be getting the glory and stuff, because you guys are you guys are the lifeblood of the programs. And so outside of the players, so, keep grinding, man. It'll all pay off in the end.
Yeah. And that continuity between junior high and high school is something a lot of people overlook.
Dude, it's a must, man. It is a must.
We'll go back to, we'll dial back there, to the Jim Draper days at Cary High School. And Cary ran the wing T until like, I don't know, 2005.
Yeah.
They ran the wing T from the time they were in third grade till the time they graduated.
Yeah.
They were good at it. So that's where, even when you were in charge at Harding, that was when I coached youth ball, and we tried to use the same verbiage.
Yeah.
It's so they understand it.
It's so huge. And honestly, like that's one of the reasons why I think CJ is going to be so successful at Pleasant. He is immersed in what they're doing at the youth level and at the middle school level. And, if you are able to get it, especially at the smaller schools, if you're able to get that thing going where the verbiage is the same and the techniques are the same, and you can just get really good at these 4 or 5 offensive plays and this base defense, by the time you become a freshman, that stuff is second nature. So for you fans out there who want your high school coaches to start running different stuff, or you need to diversify your offense, well, let us understand what we're actually supposed to be doing first. And then once we get a good grasp on that, then we will take it to the next level. But that's why it's so important to have that youth, that middle school pipeline. We talk about pipelines, that pipeline coming up to the high school. So, but when they get to you, it's second nature. That's one of the things that made Coach Hinton great. I ran 21 and 28 Dave from the time I put on a Baker Bulldogs jersey until the time I graduated from Marion Harding. You know what I mean? Like, it was all the same exact stuff that we did in middle school. You just got really, really good at it. And then once you got really good at it, well, now you're taking it to the next level. And so, it's a grind, man. It's a grind. The stipends in Ohio are nice, but the salaries in Texas for high school coaches may be a tad better.
So,
but,
before we get off of here, you brought up Baker Middle School.
Yeah.
I saw this on Facebook today, and it made me think of you. Van Crescent.
Okay.
Was antique shopping today, not sure where. And this gem was
wow. Now that is a gem.
Yeah, I saw that.
Gosh.
And immediately thought about that. I'm like, oh my
gosh.
I don't know if you bought it yet. There's 11 comments on the photo, so I'll have to look. But
dude, the Baker, Taft, Edison days were
they
were phenomenal. Those were you grow up hating those kids, and then your freshman year, you got to learn to love them because they're on your team.
T.C. Williams all over again.
All over again. Yeah.
But yeah, I think, I got nothing else for the week.
Nothing.
Next week we're going to have a little bit of Olympics talk, see if the b-ball team can get their act together. Apparently, I mean, I didn't watch any of it yesterday, but sounds like it was rough to watch.
That's what I heard, but LeBron is still...
To the surprise of nobody, the best player on the team showed he was the best player on the team.
Dude, he's not human. He's not human.
Caitlin balled out in the WNBA All-Star game last night. But DT, I don't know, man. That was wild to watch. I actually fell asleep, so I can't say much. You get old and you fall asleep watching TV. It's like my nightly routine.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, we appreciate you guys. This last week's been a little weird, I know.
Yep.
Got the are we having Spotify issues text from our boy Ratliff. He was missing us. No coach, no issues. We're back.
No issues.
So with that said, I think we will see you guys next week.
See ya.